What's the worst pain you've ever experienced? Got my wisdom teeth removed without anesthesia, conscious for the whole thing. Not to mention the insanely painful sore throat after. I couldn't even drink smoothies due to the pain. I had the same thing. The smell of the flesh as the teeth were removed is so bad too. The pain was so bad that I was getting nauseous and could barely stand on the elevator to leave as the numbing started to wear off. Physical. Toothache from a severe abscess. Mental. It's a three-way tie between my first pet dying, losing my first job and fathering an abortion. Probably getting a giant gash on my back where I had to get 12 staples put in, while having sun poisoning, mostly on my back, at the same freaking time. My friend tackled me backwards and I fell back on top of my knee, bent it back, tore my MCL and MPFL. It hurts just to type this because the pain was unbearable. I blacked out for a few seconds and screamed like a baby for 30 minutes, all before intense pain for the next 3 weeks. I still have nightmares about the feeling of when it was getting bent back. Wouldn't wish that pain on anyone. Okay, maybe ISIS. Ugh. I remember it well. Had chipped a tooth. Molar. One December when I was 18. I've always had bad teeth and hated dentists, so I didn't mention it to my family. Stupid mistake. Around 2 weeks later, the pain was near unbearable. Still didn't say anything. It was only when my mum's friend noticed I was in pain that I had to tell them. It was about 3 days before Christmas, so we had to go to dentist early in the morning, without an appointment. I sat there for nearly 2 hours in so much pain I nearly puked. The dentist finally saw me, and after giving me a strong painkiller, inspected the tooth. The root was rotting and the tooth was dead. He had to pull it out. The only funny thing about this situation was that he offered to give the tooth to my mother to bring home, lol. Apologies for the length, but let this be a lesson. If you chip your tooth, go to a dentist. Delivering my second child. His shoulder got badly stuck for 4 minutes. I had to flip around in several positions all while the midwives pushed hard on my belly and put their hands up inside me to push his shoulder down through my pelvis. They also had to do their first episiotomy. It was a home birth, so I had no drugs. Felt everything. I was telling them to just kill me. Labor itself was nearly painless. Then that happened. No more kids for me. Physical. I fractured my ankle, broke my leg and tore my ligament. The DRs didn't even know I'd broken my leg till a while after I was in the ER, cause I was mainly complaining about my ankle feeling funky. A passing nurse saw the bottom of my x-ray where the break could be slightly seen and mentioned it to the DRs. Off for more x-rays I went. During the healing my leg was so painful. Fun times, not emotional. My dad died suddenly when I was 15. That severely sucked. Period cramps that caused me to drop to the floor in pain. I couldn't get up and had to crawl back to my room. Either that, or my dentist forcefully pulling out my last baby tooth, which was just past the point of being a little bit loose. It was pretty much still attached to my mouth, and he just yanked that sucker right out. Tooth pain. Hands down. I had a baby and didn't shed a tear. Tooth pain. Specifically a broken molar, infected, with an exposed nerve. That crap had me in bed, in the fetal position, crying and begging dentists to see me within the hour on a Saturday. This injury just finished healing and I can still remember exactly how painful it was. I got bit by a dog, creating a puncture wound in my hand. I figured I could clean it myself and it'd heal okay. I was very, very wrong. 48 hours later I'm crying uncontrollably with the top of my hand entirely swollen and red. I couldn't move a finger without excruciating pain. I could feel my heartbeat on the hand, which only caused a shot of pain every second. 10 days of antibiotics later and pain pills, I'm good to go again. But I sure learned my lesson about animal bites. Oh, cellulitis. Rough. Pulmonary embolism. Woke up with a blood clot in my lung without warning. I thought I got hit by a stray bullet or something. I had one last year. Didn't get any pain, only shortness of breath. Migraine. I've given birth 3 times without any medication and I'd do it another 3 if it meant I'd never have another bad headache. Infected teeth. Twice. Had one hurting molar but was afraid of the dentist. Took paracetamol for a while until it stopped working. Switched to ibuprofen. Stopped working. 2. Spent the nights walking outside. The cold air would provide some relief. Then went home when I was tired enough and pretty much passed out immediately. Missed classes, causing me to fail due to attendance. After a few days I realized I would probably get into real trouble due to exhaustion. So I went to the next dentist I could find. Got a root canal and a temporary filling. Did not go back for the permanent filling. The tooth broke apart after a few years, but it did not hurt. A few more years later, another tooth hurts. Take painkillers. Painkillers stop working. Sounds familiar. Cannot sleep. Call in sick at work and spend 2 days at home in fear of the dentist. The third night I realized drinking water makes the pain go away for a few seconds. Drink little sips until I feel dizzy. Then just swish it around the mouth a bit and spit it out. Called my parents at 5 am to please drive me to the dentist at 8 am. Cannot drive by myself for lack of sleep. The tooth has to be extracted along with the sad remains of others. That was 3 years ago. In total I have lost 4 teeth due to irrational and extreme fear. I have not missed one dentist appointment since. I still get cold sweat and shaky hands as soon as I open the dentist door, but I manage. Torsioning ovary. Top of the list. My vision went red from the pain. I couldn't move or speak until it ceased. Dislocated knee and wrecked ACL from getting launched off a horse and landing awkwardly on my feet was a close second. While playing a mini game in Mario Party, the skin on my entire palm ripped off. I think the game was called Paddle Battle. You and a friend are on one side of a paddle boat trying to stay away from bad guys on the coast while you try to out-paddle your rivals on the other side of your boat. So they hit the other coast and hit bad guys. You had to rotate the control stick in a circle on your palm to get the paddles to move. Apparently I did it so aggressively once, it ripped my palm skin off. It took about a month to grow back I think. Had to learn to write with my other hand. Crap bro, I used to have calluses from Mario Party. I remember rubbing my palm raw all the time as a kid lol. I drove my dirt bike into a pine tree. I was not wearing a helmet. The doctor was using a syringe to scrape pine bark and needles out of my face. I only got 1 stitch. To this day I'm amazed I didn't lose an eyeball or cut my jugular. I have 2 scars across my neck and cheek. Gallbladder attack. I spent a year having them because my doctor misdiagnosed it as back spasms. I was taking muscle relaxants whenever I started to have one and praying it would help. It never did. I eventually took up meditation to help me through the attacks because the medicine I was taking didn't help at all. Finally, about 16 months later, I had an attack that was so intense I could hardly talk because it was so painful. I woke my wife up and just said hospital and walked out to the car. She drove me there where I was given great drugs to relieve the pain. I then found out that my gallbladder was functioning at around 5%. It was taken out later that day. Gallbladder attacks are no freaking joke. I would take dry socket while in labor over that. Morphine and Dilaudid didn't touch my pain. Surgery to remove a large thyroglossal duct cyst from my neck. Swallowing water was excruciating. Breathing was painful. I've had 4 C-sections and would have gladly had another over that surgery. The only positive, I wasn't required to take the cyst home, have it keep me up all night, feed it, raise it, endure its teen years and send it to college. Chronic migraines. Some were worse than others. A notable memory is realizing I was moaning at near scream level while wide awake but delirious with pain. Most days, 6 months disabled, I would wake up, have 10 minutes pain free, just enough time to get meds, grab something to eat in my chair, and sit in my chair for the rest of the day surviving. I got to know colors, shades, and textures of pain when I used to think it was just single sort of mechanism that changed based on where it hurt. At some points it felt like I had wires running through my teeth like embedded braces running into my jawline and straight into my skull. A weird kind of ambient pain lived in my arms and legs for months, hurting from bone to muscle to skin. It was bizarre. So glad I only get 3-4 a year now. Hydrocephalus. Fluid on the brain. Cerebrospinal fluid was building up in my cranium and literally crushing my brain to death. I was losing vision due to pressure on my optic nerve when I had corrective surgery. Toothaches. By far, I've had salmonella poisoning before. had stomach cramps that'd drop me to the floor, but a toothache is an entirely different level of pain. Not listening to advice after having wisdom teeth removed. Smoked and didn't douche. Infection set in. Absolute agony. Oh, the old dry socket. Feel sorry for you. Being a dumb 14-year-old who jumped over everything. I fell onto grass from maybe 3 feet high, so it wasn't even a good stunt. Pilonidal cystectomy recovery. Inch deep. 3-inch long gash that they don't sew up, or at least wouldn't back then. Apparently the process has improved somewhat, so it has to be packed with gauze twice a day while it heals naturally. It's amazing how many seemingly innocuous, seemingly unrelated movements involve the tailbone. I was basically frightened of moving at all for a while. Walking was agony. Sitting was agony. Stairs were impossible. Get up from your freaking chairs every now and then. Walk at least 30 minutes a day, and sit with good posture. I wouldn't wish that crap on anyone. Having the cyst removed and the recovery from the surgery was a cakewalk. It was dealing with all of the infections and lancings before the surgery that was heck for me. A little backstory before the pain. I was diagnosed with MS a few years ago, and besides now hating the heat even more and getting to park where I want, I had immense pain in my right knee. It would center in the knee but radiate out. That and symptoms worsening made it so I had to relearn how to walk a few times. Okay, now to the pain. My pain doctor was confused as to why I still had pain in my right leg after I had been on meds for a while, so he recommended a nerve block. Some of you might know where this is going, but those of you that don't have no idea how brutal it can be. I was told this was their most painful procedure but was optimistic. A nerve block is where something is injected into nerves in order to deaden them and relieve pain. But it's not just a shot, it's massive needles going into your skin and down to the nerve, and then you sitting there for a short amount of time while something is done. I don't remember because of what came next. So I lay down on the table and they tell me to put my knee up a bit so they could get a pillow thing underneath. I'm nervous, and then the doctor comes in and with him come the needles, which were 4 or 5 inches long. There was also a local anesthetic to be used. I expected them to inject the anesthetic and then let it take effect, but instead they injected it and then stabbed those gigantic freaking needles from earlier above and below my knee. I start cursing and crying and they say it should be numbed soon. It never did. I'm crying for what felt like 10 minutes but was probably only 1. It felt like what I imagine getting stabbed feels like. Sharp, brutal pain that I never want to experience again. The next thing I know, I'm outside the room and people are hovering around me. Apparently I passed out and had to be carried out of the OR and put into a chair. They were super worried about me, but the doctor was smiling like crazy, hoping it had finally helped. Now this may have been fine if the procedure had worked, but it freaking didn't. Could barely walk for a week and was furious at the doctor for later just tossing his hands up and saying he had no other ideas to help. He's not my doctor anymore. TLDR. Worst pain I've ever experienced was a nerve block operation to help with my MS pain. I passed out. It didn't help and I changed doctors. I once waited in line for over 30+ minutes for some ice cream made at one of those new, hip anti-griddle ice cream shops. It tasted just like regular ice cream. Ouch. I have diverticulosis, which sometimes becomes diverticulitis. Simply put, my colon is very prone to infection and perforations. Compare the pain to passing a kidney stone through the lining of your intestines. I was severely constipated. I had to reach in and pull out whatever I could. It was like dry clay that didn't want to come out. I passed out on the washroom floor from probably a mix of straining and pain. I called my GF over to give me an enema and try to pull out whatever she could. The small applicator tip of the enema felt like a red hot poker against my puckered up ruby red starfish. I have a keloid on my knee, which is an unusually formed scar. I got one after scraping the inner edge of my left knee. When it was still a fresh wound, I could barely bend my leg. Worst is relative. The different kinds of pain that all rated very high on the pain scale for me. Pneumonia coughs. When your SP02 is in the 75 range, and you cannot stop coughing, it hurts, and you teeter on the edge of conscious. At least I did. Getting my finger caught in a running alternator. My helper tried to turn over the vehicle while I was still under the hood. Getting hit by a windsurfer while snorkeling. And washed into coral by the waves. Lifeguard was pretty pee at the surfer. They weren't supposed to be there. The impact left a very large bruise across my back, cracking a rib. The coral cut through everything. I was a bloody mess getting pulled out. Scrubbing the coral bits out was pretty unpleasant. 2. I've broken both of my legs before, but the absolute worst pain I've experienced was the hair transplant I got in Manila. I think in most cases for that procedure they would use gas. My doctor gave me some BS story about the dangers of gas because he didn't want to use it, for cost reasons maybe. Instead I was given a couple of likely over-the-counter pain meds, then they administered 16 or so shots of some sort of numbing agent into my scalp. After enduring the pain of the shots, I guess the numbing worked. I really didn't feel them cut the strip of my scalp out that they harvested the follicles from. But my head hurt for months after the procedure. Didn't stop me from having a good time in Boracay the following week though. I spent 2 weeks of a summer having a near continuous GERD attack that left me immobile and retching painfully because my mother claimed it was just indigestion. It bewilders me when I see commercials for GERD medicine where the actors talk about it as if it's a mild inconvenience to experience an attack. I don't know if my particular case is just very bad. It is freaking painful. It feels like your abdomen is trying to tear itself apart. It's near impossible to walk. You can't breathe without reigniting the pain. And it lasts for upwards of 12 hours. Mine has felt like a heart attack and had me in the air. Severe depression. Either I'm dead inside, or I'm completely falling apart. If I could hack off my left arm to make it go away, I would. I'm getting help, but I'm pretty sure this pain will kill me in spite of that. I could feel 90% of my C-section. I didn't feel the initial cut, but I felt everything else. Second, an unsedated endoscopy that had a rough biopsy. Dude, your doctors sound incompetent as heck. It's the pain to be unable to help and just have to accept the fate and hope. My mother got diagnosed with leukemia today. This is a freaking crap feeling that I ever wish anyone else. Oh man, I'm so sorry. I wish you and your family all the best. I know it doesn't sound like much right now, but cancer treatments are an amazing thing. My grandmother went in with stage 4 lung cancer reluctant to seek treatment, and chemo and radiation have bought her years. Most days she's out doing yard work like it's not even an issue. It's a tie between my dad dying on my birthday and my mom dying a few years later 5 days before. My dad was worse. He was first and one of the first big deaths in my life. When my mom died it was more of a oh crap it actually happened. My mom was ill for a long time, both mentally and physically. She had her own battles, but even still I never expected it so soon. When the police came to the door and asked my name and who my mother was, I knew immediately what had happened. They almost looked confused when I didn't react. Sadly I just said okay and went back inside. The truth was I had nothing to say. I slid backside down the door and sat there for a long time. I didn't cry the first day, but I've cried every day since. Hug your parents for me. Had bacterial meningitis. The pain made me want to just put a shotgun in my mouth and end it. Had to be put on 3 different painkillers all at once. Racked up 12k in hospital bills in 2 days. Murica. Lumbar puncture. To make sure that my fever wasn't due to meningitis. Doctor had trouble getting the needle in the right place and had to have a few tries basically stabbing me with the needle. On the upside I didn't have meningitis. Maybe this is gross but I'll share it anyway. I get really bad earwax and I don't really know why. It's happened my entire life and every trip to the doctors usually involves some sort of scraping where they pull out a half-inch long piece of black, gross funk from either ear. Nasty. So anyway, about 3 years ago now I suddenly lose the hearing in one ear. Not totally, I'd say about 50%, and I can tell it's clogged up. My mom didn't really take me seriously until her friend pointed out I was really having problems hearing. We tried some at-home stuff, flushes and dissolvers and all that, but I still felt stuffy. My birthday rolls around after like a day of no hearing from that ear. That's when the pain begins. It starts off pretty manageable, like an earache. So I pop some aspirin and try to enjoy my birthday. Go out to dinner with my friends and they're all making faces at me because every minute or so the pain kicks up. Long story short, I end up in the air for the first time in my life. They think I may have just gotten an infection behind a plug of wax, so they give me some painkillers and antibiotics. But they can't get the wax out right then and there. The pain only gets worse from there. Head splitting, mind-numbing pain from the top of my head down through my jaw and neck. I can't sleep. I can't even cry because that makes the pain worse. I can't focus on anything. I am essentially a vegetable from the pain. I am downing 3 Advil every 6 hours, rip my liver, and praying for relief. I'm saying like a 9/10 because I'm sure being shot would hurt worse. None of the painkillers are working. Percocet, Oxy, whatever. 6 days like this. To make matters worse, my grandmother passes away, so now I'm emotionally damaged as well. Finally get to an end and they stick a little vacuum in my ear. It took 2 trips to the office and bearing the dizziness and trauma of having a vacuum in your ear. Vertigo like no other. I almost passed out. Finally the guy pulls out an enormous plug of earwax. It literally looked like a small stone, probably about the size of a marble, or like a blueberry, hard as a rock and totally black. Hideous. Instant relief. I left with eardrops to prevent infection and ditched the rest of the pain meds. TLDR. A marble-sized ball of earwax stuck in my ear had me on some serious prescription pain meds for a week. Erosinositis. Pain that makes you cry and grab onto the plane seat handles for dear life as you think you're going to faint while the plane's descending. Worst of all, frequent traveler. Being wounded in Vietnam with debris from a Claymore mine. I'm a 71-year-old disabled veteran and still paying the price for that one 50 years later. And so it goes. Getting microfracturing surgery on my knee. It's exactly what it sounds like. They essentially take an awl and make holes in the bottom of your femur to try and get bone marrow to form a superclot to replace the cartilage. My surgeon was an idiot and told me I only needed crutches for a week. Not wanting to be a P, I stopped using them. Had to get surgery again last year because you need to be non-weight bearing for 6-8 weeks after microfracture surgery. I had a tooth pulled without being numb. I have a super high pain tolerance and I was absolutely hysterical by the end. Nothing on earth that I have experienced, and I have chronic pain, multiple surgeries, body mods, was as bad as this. I was 11 at my grandparents' house hanging out with the neighbor kids, the Bob boys. We went into the only store in the small PA mountain town and bought some stuff called bauxite. Bauxite is used in dynamite or cannons or something. So we went up the hill to the cemetery off in the woods where we knew nobody would be. We start putting the bauxite in a cooler with a lid on it and start dropping matches in it. The mouthpiece was one of those straw types that unfold from the top, so we would put the match in the hole and the lid would shoot off 30 feet into the air. The last time we tried it, we poured the rest of the tube in, which was about a quarter of it. I went to put the match in and the lid of the plastic cooler shot off and hit me in the hand. I instantly had about 15 blood blisters and thought I was going to die. The Bob boys hopped on their bikes and rode off while I lay there for a while. I got up and walked to my great grandfather's grave and laid down on this bench he had by his tombstone and waited to die. I fell asleep and woke up around 8 at night with some mad parents and grandparents. Emotional pain sucks a lot, and probably the worst pain any can really feel long term, but physically is being burned. I work at a Mexican restaurant and I was pouring some hot queso in a bowl when I realized I poured it on my hand and gave myself a 3rd-degree burn. Hurt for a few days and lost a little bit of feeling. Sucks a lot. Getting my left arm relocated. I broke both bones, L and speech, while jumping trampoline on vacation in Italy in a really twisted angle. I had to endure this for 2 hours until we arrived in the hospital. Well, let's just say it was not practice to use anesthetics for the relocation process. All I got was a piece of wood to bite on. I was 10. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.